Silence at the table is dangerous. Not the tense pressure before a die roll silence. The hollow pause where players are waiting for you to push the story forward. This episode is about breaking that silence, not with loud descriptions or heavier prep, but by building urgency that comes from the players themselves. When curiosity takes root, the table drives the game forward. Questions spark, secrets spread, and the story runs faster than you could ever push it on your own. This is episode 17 of my 20-part campaign mastery series, and how to turn those quiet tables into tables that learn how to sprint. Chapter 1, The Problem. The stall doesn't happen because your world is weak, and it doesn't happen because your story is broken. It's because your players sit in front of choices and they don't move. And the only excitement is you or them rolling dice. So they talk, circles, and they're waiting for their world to shove them forward. Back in episode 11, we talked about momentum and how the world doesn't freeze just because the players hesitate. That gave your setting agency. Your world is alive. And it proves that your villain keeps scheming and the storm is still coming and your threads are constantly changing, even if your party never lifts a finger. But even if your world does keep moving, if your players are not moving with it, the game stalls. Now, you definitely need a living world. That isn't the point. But having just a breathing world is only half of the equation. If your players don't act, the pressure builds, but it doesn't ignite anything. You're left with energy hanging in the air and no spark to catch it. That's the problem. And not silence you create, but silence they chose. A table that can go anywhere, but instead goes nowhere. Chapter 2, Spark Curiosity. These are tools. And I'll be clear up front, you don't need to use all of them. Even one or two will change the energy at your table. But I'm showing you all of them up front now because they're going to set the stage for everything else in this episode. The rest of the video is about how to make these sparks catch fire, how to deploy them, build on them, and turn curiosity into urgency that never fades. The first tool is notes. Physically hand a slip of paper to a player somewhere in the middle of a session. And it doesn't always need to be important. Sometimes it's just a dumb joke. Sometimes it's just color, but every once in a while, it's critical. The trick isn't the content, it's the action. The moment you pass a note, the whole table wants to know what's on it. Questions will fly. And what does that note say? And why did you give it to that player? Just that player. And why now? That curiosity catches like fire. The second tool is whispers. Pull a player aside. Let everybody see it. Maybe during a break, give them one line. Maybe it's real. Maybe it's just a misleading piece of information. The silence you leave behind is the real weapon. Because the rest of the table now has to fill it in. What did you tell them with more questions? The third tool is props. A burned scrap of map, a key with no lock, maybe a letter written in code. The table can hold it. They can turn it over. And they're going to argue about what it means. The world feels heavier when they can touch it. And the questions will keep coming. Who left this? Why is this here? What does this unlock? And so on. The fourth tool is rumors. This is not exposition. It's rumors. Non-player characters who don't agree. Two stories that don't match. A piece of gossip that might be true or it might be a lie. Players will not be able to risk trying to sort out what's real and what's not. And the moment they do, they're no longer waiting for you. They've picked a direction and now they're chasing something at a full sprint. And the last tool is the secrets between players. Give one character some information that the others don't have. And it doesn't need to be earth-shattering. It could be a family name, a scar, a strange dream. It's the pressure that matters. One person has it and the rest don't. And now the table starts looking inwards for the next questions and the next answers. And none of these tools are complicated. They're really not. But they don't stand alone either, because a note by itself is just a piece of paper. A whisper is just some random sentence. What makes them powerful is how you use them, how you turn the spark into something the table can't stop pulling on. That's the rest of this video, because now you've got the tools. Let's learn how to make them stick. Chapter 3, make the players feel special. Every player at the table wants to feel like they matter, not just because it's their turn or that they are an intricate part of combat, filling a role of tank or DPS or whatever, but because the world itself bends differently because they're in it. And the fastest way to do that is with knowledge. Treasure is nice, but it's also disposable. And it's kind of fake, even like real money, because we work, we get it, we spend it. We work, we get it, we spend it. A level up also feels really good, but everyone eventually gets one and it's not special. But knowledge is different. And having knowledge changes how the game moves. Think about what happens when one player gets a note and the others don't get to see it, or a rumor that only one of them overheard. And suddenly their character isn't just a part of the group. They're holding something the rest of the table needs or wants. The questions start coming to them and not to you as the game master or the DM. And in that moment, they know they matter. This doesn't need to be massive. It could be a small clue, a strange symbol, a passing comment from an NPC. The scale isn't important. What is important is the weight. One player can carry something nobody else gets to. And that's what makes them special. And when you do this well, players stop seeing themselves as passengers in your story, and they start seeing themselves as necessary. Their presence, their attention is the difference between moving forward or missing something entirely. And once a player feels that weight, they stop sitting back. They lean forward because the world is telling them, you know what? Your information and you matter. Chapter 4, the right questions. Not all questions are equal. Some of them are just really shallow. What's in the next room? How many guards are there? These questions close the moment you answer them. They give just information. But in that information, they really don't give any emotion. And sometimes, granted, yes, that's all you need or want. But you also need questions that matter and start to open doors. Why is this here? Who benefits from this? What happens if we walk away? These don't end with answers. They begin with it. They force the table to think about motives, consequences, and what connections they haven't seen yet. And as the DM, you don't have to lecture your players on how to ask these kinds of questions. You just need to create situations where shallow questions feel empty and deep questions feel necessary. A locked chest is just a chest until you describe the insignia carved on the lid. Now the question isn't, what's inside? It's, why should that family lock something away here? That difference pulls the players into the weave of your world, and once the table learns that open questions get them farther than closed ones, they start asking them without even thinking. The game will shift. They're no longer just scanning for details, they're digging for meaning. And every time they dig, the world feels just a little bit more alive. Chapter 5, the DM's, GM's response. When players start asking the right questions, how you answer decides whether that momentum builds or it dies. A flat answer ends it, stops it. Why is the door barred and locked from the outside? Well, because the owner didn't want anyone inside. It's done, and the players have no reason to dig any deeper. A layered answer keeps it alive. It's barred and locked from the outside, and there are deep scratches along the inside of the frame. Now the table has to wonder, who was trapped and forced inside? Who locked it and why? The goal isn't to be cryptic. It's to give answers that open more doors than they close. If the players ask who benefits from a treaty, you don't hand them a list of the political factions. You let the envoy say, everyone benefits, while the merchant in the corner mutters something different under his breath. Now they have somewhere to push. The best answers don't end a conversation. They spark new ones. And by you showing this at your table, this gives them depth and it gives them something to push and pull against, sparking curiosity and moving the game forward. Chapter 6, Building a Culture of Curiosity. One trick can spark a session, a note, a rumor, a prop. It'll get your people leaning forward for at least one night. But if you want curiosity to last, it has to become part of the culture of your table. That culture comes from repetition. When players ask questions, the answers need to matter. Not necessarily with clarity, but always with some weight. If the players' questions never matter, players will stop asking because there has to be some type of payoff for your players to want to lean in and chase those questions. So how do you train that instinct? Well, start with consistency. Each time the players ask, let something shift. It can be a lead, a danger, or even just a reaction. The point isn't to reward them with loot. It's to prove that questions are fuel. Use consequences. If they ask the wrong NPC a dangerous question, maybe word spreads. If they never ask about a rumor or follow up, let it grow into a real problem. This shows them that silence has just as much weight as curiosity. Make the world answer differently. A noble might give one version of an event, a guard another, a rival a third. The truth potentially sits in between them all. Your players see that one question can create multiple answers. They start digging deeper and keep some answers constantly in flux. When the players asks, don't tie everything off with a neat little bow. Let answers create new angles. They scratch the scratched door frame, the muttering merchant, the coded map. These details don't finish the mystery. They prove the world is deeper than a single one or two word answer. And the more you do this, the faster players will learn. They'll see that curiosity drives the game forward. They see that silence costs them, and soon they're leaning in, pressing for meaning, chasing threads you never had to push. The dog only chases the bunny because of the payoff. Give them a bunny. That's a culture of curiosity. And it's not one trick and it's not one night, but it's a table where questions are the heartbeat of your campaign. Chapter 7, The Cost of Silence. The real value of asking is that it changes the game. Players need to learn that their questions matter. Your job is to prove it every single time. Too often we're conditioned to think that if something's important, we'll spotlight it. We'll give it a glow. We'll put a blinking marker on the map. But in a role-playing game, the players have to do the digging. And curiosity only works if silence has a cost. If nothing happens when they ignore something, they will learn their questions don't really matter. That's why your world has to keep shifting when they don't move. The letter left on the table now gets picked up by someone else. And that rumor that they dismissed now grows into an actual threat. The envoy they decided to avoid goes off and signs that treaty without them. These aren't punishments, they're proof. The proof that the world doesn't wait. and that silence carries weight, the same way action does. And once players see that, they'll stop sitting back. They know every missed question can slam a door shut. They feel the pressure to act, not because you told them to, but because the game itself makes silence dangerous. And that's when urgency becomes real, not just a spark, not just a culture, but a force that drives the campaign forward every single session. Conclusion. We started with silence, a table waiting for you to push. Now we've built something different. We've seen how to spark curiosity and how to make your players feel like they matter, and how to push for the right questions, and how to answer in ways that keep the chase alive. You've seen how to build a culture where asking becomes instinct and silence has weight. That is urgency. That's what turns a passive table into one that sprints as hard as it can into your world. But urgency leads to something else. Once players are running, they also want to grow, to get better. And that's not just through treasure or XP drops, but through training, through effort, through progress that feels earned. That's where we're heading in episode 18, leveling, training, and building realistic expectations of growth inside a living world. And as always, remember, the warm below. The fluffy spawn don't wait for answers. They scratch the dark, tugging at every thread, chasing every secret. Because in the warm below, silence never lasts.